Hey everyone, I'm Mike Settele, the founder of Settele Tutoring, and in this video I'm going to help you understand the digital SAT format. Specifically, I'm going to end by giving you a key strategy that you must follow if you are looking for a top score that's above a 600 in either of the two sections, so really important. But this is just a basic overview of some things. There will be places where I tell you to get a little bit more detail from a separate video, so make sure you subscribe to my channel so you have easy access to all of those resources and strategy videos so that you can prepare the best way possible for this test. There's also more stuff on my website. But let's just go first through the numbers. What is the digital SAT? You probably know that the total score is 1600, but how do we get there? There are two subjects that make up the entire test, each out of 800. The reading and writing is one subject, and then the math is a separate subject. Within each subject, you're going to get two modules, all right? So for reading and writing, both modules are 27 questions long, and that's 32 minutes. Now in math, it's slightly different. Each module is 22 questions long and 35 minutes. Now if we tally that up for each subject, the entire reading and writing section is 54 questions in 64 minutes, and the entire math section is 44 questions in 70 minutes. Take that over the entire test, and you've got 98 questions in 134 minutes. But two notes about those totals. First, the 98 questions, as you can see, include 8 questions that don't count. They will not impact your score in any way. Basically, what the SAT is going to do twice per module is they are going to use you as a guinea pig to test out new questions. They won't be labeled in any particular way. They will look like any other question. They will sound like any other question because they are potentially real SAT questions that future test takers might have, but for you, they are just there to kind of test things out. So that might be frustrating, but just continue taking the test as if they're all the same and it won't really affect things in any way. You won't be able to identify those questions as you go, but it is a reminder that if you are struggling on a question, you might just need to pick a letter and move on because you don't want to run out of time. And it is possible that the question you're struggling with, it doesn't even count. So it's a lot of time and effort for nothing. So just make sure you're always moving through these sections in a steady pace. You don't want to let yourself get bogged down by just one question. Now, as far as the test timing goes, 134 minutes is equal to 2 hours and 14 minutes. So that's not that long. Past SATs were almost twice that. But regardless, there is going to be a little bit of a change to the overall time. You will have a 10-minute break in between the reading and writing and math. So there is that's going to add some time. Plus, at the beginning of the sections and the beginning of the entire test, you're going to have instructions. You got to log into the app, all sorts of stuff that's going to take time. So you're probably looking at more like 3 hours, maybe a little longer, but still, it's much shorter overall than previous versions of the SAT. I will note, though, that since the test is digital and everyone's kind of moving at their own pace, you might have different people having their breaks at different times. And so you might be taking the test while someone else is getting up to go to the bathroom and taking their break. So if you're used to testing in a completely silent, distraction-free environment, you have to get used to a few kind of things going on around you as you're taking the test. So take your practice test in a library or somewhere where there's other people so you can get used to that. It's very likely that during your test, you will be working while someone else is coming and going, while people are dealing with tech issues and chargers. So you just need to get used to that for the digital SAT. Not everyone is going to be on the same exact timer, but everyone will be working in the same exact app. The College Board has released the Blue Book app that you will use to take the actual SAT. Many of you have already used it to take the PSAT, and when you take practice tests, you will also use the same app. So you really do want to use it for practice so you can get used to it for the real thing. There are a few features that are built into every single section of the practice tests and the real test. You're going to see the timer at the top of the screen. That'll tell you, how much time you have left in the section so you can pace yourself effectively. You will also be able to bookmark questions that bother you. You can cross out the answers you don't like. And because it is a digital test, you will have also some scrap paper that you can use for handwritten notes on certainly the math section, but also the reading. So you will be able to take notes wherever you want. In the app itself, for the reading and writing, you will also have the ability to highlight and annotate the passages. So you can highlight things that you like and then type little notes to yourself there. And in math, you will have access to the Desmos calculator built in for every single question, as well well as the geometry formulas. So get used to all of these things by taking practice tests. I will make a separate video that explains how to take practice tests, but my big piece of advice there is don't waste them. There are only a few, so you want to make sure you're saving them and not just blowing right through all of them right away. You got to save them for different stages of your prep, and I will make a separate video for that. Other things that are important about the digital test, if you do get testing accommodations like extra time or a reader, those things are going to be built into the app, so that'll make it a little bit more seamless of a process for you, and it'll make it easier to practice with those accommodations. And also, because the test is digital, the scores will be returned much more quickly than in the past. In only a few days, you will know your score, so that is great for helping you plan for whatever you want to do next. But before we end here, I want to talk about the most important feature of the digital test. It is an adaptive test. So what does that mean? Everyone is going to take a module 1 for each subject that is average difficulty. It is going to have a couple easy questions, a couple hard questions. Most of them will be somewhere in the middle. Depending on how you do on that module, you are going to get placed in a different second module. So if you do well enough, they will place you in a second module that is noticeably harder than the first. Now, one thing to note about that is it's going to still be the same amount of time and the same number of questions. So pacing in that hard module will be more difficult. That's a good thing. That means that you're in the hard module. Now, if you don't do so well in the first module, then you will get placed in a second module that is noticeably easier. And again, you will notice, I'm going to really stress that word, it will feel different because the number of easy questions in that module is much greater than it was in the first one. And you might be thinking, great, well, I want easy questions. So how do I get into that easy module? That sounds great. Well, for many of you, it's totally fine. Just take the test as normal and you'll get placed where you should get placed based on your ability. But if you're aiming for a top score, you really do not want to be in that easy module, because what happens is it caps your score at about a 600. So even if you get every single question right in the easy module, you cannot earn higher than a 600, or at least not much higher. And I have a separate video that goes into some of the experiments that I've done and the math that is involved in this. It's not easy and it's not straightforward, but for now, that's what I want you to take away, is that easy module limits your score. So if you want 600s or higher in a section, you got to get into the hard module. And that's the big question. What does it take to get placed in that hard module? After these experiments that I've done, my conclusion is that at most, you can get 5 wrong in module 1 and still get placed in the harder module for module 2. Now, it varies depending on the test, depending on which ones you get wrong, so it's not a simple answer, and sometimes you can get 6, 7, 8, or even 9 questions wrong and still get placed in that hard module. But to play it safe, 5 is your limit. So I will have another video too that talks about a strategy you can use to follow this more accurately and to really plan this out. But if you want a top score, that should be your number one takeaway from this lesson, is that you have to be really careful in module 1. No careless mistakes, nothing wrong that could be easily solved with a calculator or an SAT strategy. You have to be as good as possible. You can throw some questions overboard. 5 wrong is still okay, so you want to make sure you're planning though, so that you're throwing the questions overboard that will maximize your score and everything else. It really does affect the overall score of the test. That may be unfair, but as long as you know the rules of the game, you're more likely to be able to win that game. So that's what I'm hoping you take away from this. But like I said, there is more to all of this. The digital SAT has a lot of components and a lot of strategies, so make sure you subscribe to my channel so that way you can have access to all of that information. I do have a 10-episode series that covers the main strategies for the digital SAT. That is a great place to start with your prep, but you can also find additional resources on my website. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this got you started. And remember, when it comes to your scores, don't settle for less. Settele for more.